Okay, here I am at another park making another video. These same pieces of equipment that I've shown you in previous videos. What I've done is tune the frequency generator to the same frequency as what resonates with the paint that's I painted these pieces of furniture with. What I'm doing is just showing you a few things. There's some stuff I wanted to go over here just to talk about theory a little bit. Something I've realized could be the case that's related to some other things that I've been thinking about that are related to a theory I've been developing over time that has its origins in the arc model. The rest of this stuff that's in this box, but which is based on the Ark of the Covenant. Oh yeah, that guy with that religious stuff again. Oh, I don't think I want to watch any more of that video. That dude's crazy, or he's biased, or whatever. That's what I guess expect to hear people say. But you know, I'm painstakingly trying to work through things, developing different theories based upon observation and also reason. Because there are two ways to think about things, two ways to approach theoretical understanding that are really I'm going to deal with that little noisemaker on my helmet. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to set this thing up. We've got taller grass than we had in our previous videos at the other park. I've made a more sturdy base for the candlestick, which will probably still fall over. Hey, what can you do? I made that previous movie where I ran around and I showed that when you have a frequency generator on the arc model, you can take that antenna and shorten it. Trying to get it more over the arc, but not. We know from our previous experience that when we have a, as well get that as even as we can. Like it really makes that much of a difference. But so when you get inside of this area created by the outer furniture, you get a signal, and you get a signal that crosses between what is the model of the incense altar, which this is the incense altar, you know, placeholder for it at least. It's not exactly the right shape and size and stuff, but it's a painted box, so it has generally the same shape as the incense altar. And you have the table of showbread and the candlestick. And of course the ark. And I showed in the previous video that you should expect, yeah, maybe the candlestick to fall over. Guess we can probably just set that back up. But then out here there'll be a line, some distance. And there will actually be a succession of lines. At some distance. Intervals. You can cause the distance of those to increase by increasing this distance. It increases quite a bit, actually. For the increase. Yeah, I have to tell you also, when I got here and I scouted out things, there are some other signal lines around here. I don't know, there are other things in people's homes in the distance or whatever that are I'm getting some signals from that have nothing to do with my equipment, but you know, what can I do about that? I can still just basically run through this and show you same thing is going on here. Okay, there's the first one. Okay, and they'll be probably there. Move my head back this time because I know that it's difficult to see. So we're quite a bit further out with that increase in size due to increasing the distance between, I believe, the front of this and the arc. And that line goes all the way around. In fact, they just keep going and keep going and keep going. I assume, you know, I'd have to actually run it out, but you know, this isn't a park size that's great enough to do it, and it's not really something I need to do for what I wanted to talk about. Which is that I hope it hasn't passed anybody's attention that this is an atomic model. Yeah, the Ark of the Covenant furniture in the temple, all that stuff, it's an atomic model. It's a different atomic model than the atomic model that science has currently, but it's not all that far off. It's a model that coincides actually with the theory that I was discussing earlier, that I wanted to come out here and make a video to talk about that and to talk about what's going on when you don't have the arc hooked up. I'm going to turn this thing off because I might as well save those batteries. Which is that I'm going to get this back in here because I don't want to leave it out for purposes of doing these other things, especially this next thing that I wanted to talk about. I described previously in another video at the big park that I did what this thing's really was made for, which is to prospect. I've used it to prospect for gold, which I found some with it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, but it's not really all that effective because it's not like a metal detector where you can get on the spot and there it is. It's going to be at depth sometimes or whatever. The major point I was trying to make is that we're dealing with this device here, which, yeah, I did remember to turn it on, this is about light. And the reason I wanted to make this video is to make this point. In the previous video that I made, I said it might be darkness and light. Actually, I think it's all light. The fact that you can, these are always on. The rods are pointed straight out. This is the position they assume because they do. And that's because that thing's turned on. In other words, they wouldn't be biased toward being open like this unless that machine were turned on. And then the signal line stuff that I get across wouldn't be biased toward crossing the rods without the machine on. But I think these two things are both light, since I've given it a lot more thought. You know how an electromagnetic light travels, it's just the electromagnetic force. It's got two things going through at the same time. And the reason why this relates to the theory that I've been thinking about is that whatever you want to call the atom and the arc essentially is a proton, but it's a proton that's in certain circumstances, like in hydrogen, is just there by itself, and in heavier atoms it's still essentially there by itself, but what you're getting with fusion is you're adding more pieces of furniture out at a distance. You're taking something which is, let's say this was still sitting on the arc. That's essentially staying the same. You might have your furniture out here for the outer furniture. But what I think is going on when you have fusion in an atom is you're getting another set of furniture. And then you get these other rings corresponding, of course, going out from that. And so on and so on. All the different sets of furniture, as it were. Which these things really just represent when you're trying to make something from nothing. And you're wanting to make, in the case of this hypothesis, a sphere, or as we're doing it here, a circle, because obviously we're interacting the Earth here in a way. I have no idea if this is all spherical or whatever, but there's still something going on with how we walk this out that has a great deal to do with an interaction with the Earth, with gravity, which, if you know, everything's all really can be brought down to one force. There's nothing that doesn't make sense about that. So in essence, used as a prospecting tool, this thing, you get a signal. It lasts a little while, locks for a while, for however many seconds, minutes, whatnot, depending upon, the assumption is depending upon how much mass there is in the target that the frequency generator is set to resonate with. You get an unlock time and you get a lock time. Seldom are they exactly equal. But they are the same. That is to say, the lock time and the unlock time remain the same no matter what distance you are from the object. I could take that and I could put it way over there and I'd still have the same lock time. What happens, however, is that your locking and unlocking is related to the observer, which is me when I come over this thing. That's when you get the first lock. You know, I'm not getting I'm not owed some unlock time from just a moment ago when I was previously standing on this thing and they locked and then they unlocked and they were supposed to stay unlocked for a little while longer when I backed out of it. No, there isn't any data that's kept or anything like that. It's all based upon the observer. So I come along here. This is a lot like how in quantum physics the observer is important. I may not support quantum physics with this theoretical approach all that much, but I can tell you that there's obviously something to it. Which is to say that quantum physics is probably just as much removed from the truth of what's going on in nature as this phenomenon, where the observer is so important, is in comparison to the arc model, where I got that thing sitting on the arc and you have, it's more field-like around here then, and you're not talking about signal lines, locking and unlocking so much as for periods of time, as you are talking about actual time you sat with the arc. There's some things you can do when you have the generator on a box, which we can get into it. Might as well just make the outer furniture envelope large, just to show it. This is going to be locked pretty much all day. It won't unlock inside here. The rings I don't think are going to unlock either. What I wanted to talk about, however, is how that relates to light under this hypothesis that I'm developing about atomic theory, because this theory, the hypothesis, is based upon the idea that space-time doesn't come from, it's not a priori, it doesn't exist already, it's actually created by the atom, which is why it's bent by the atom. The theory speculates that the atom is more like this. Which these pieces of furniture just represent what goes on at the envelope of understanding about what the shape of the exterior of this thing has to be in order to understand this spherical shape, or this shape that can exist out of nothing. Because remember, we're talking about there being no space-time until you get your first atom. So you have to invent space-time itself and the entire concept. You have to explain it based upon these central principles. And this is an experiment based upon that received knowledge mankind has gotten about the Ark of the Covenant and temple furniture and all that stuff, and it's just my speculation that it's got something to do with the atom. And I just happen to know about the frequency generator from prospecting, and so I said to myself, why don't I make some little models of the furniture, all of it, something that seems like it would work best as you can. I speculated I'd be able to use the paint to set the frequency on the generator, and I discovered some pretty interesting things. Namely, we've got this thing that's very much like the atom when we trace it out with our rods, which I understand perfectly well. People who are watching this video are going to say, I'm going to turn it off now because this guy's dowsing, or you haven't even made it this far because alright, I don't even understand how it works with my body myself. I just know it does. Just to let you know, I can't douse. If I don't have a frequency generator, it doesn't work. You can go around like this, just turned it off. But then, before long, you're going to get stuff that's going to be moving around just from the movements of my body. Stuff is going to start moving around whatever way it wants. You're going to have rods will do whatever, because there's a thing going on with the generator sitting on either on the ark or just on the bare ground, that it's going to make the rods do one thing or another. There's actually some amount of force. I mean, it's not great or anything like that, but I can feel it. It does seem to exist. And the stuff that I observe seems to be related to light. Seems to be light. It's just what I'm looking at is light on a whole different scale than light that we're used to thinking about. And in addition, it does something more. It suggests something that I've been thinking for a long time now. Light may not be a particle nor a wave. Light might be probability, or something very close to it. The reason why I'm talking about that kind of thing is because of the locking and unlocking when you don't have the arc, when you're just using it as a prospecting tool. If those are both light, but they're just two different characteristics of light and they interchange, then we need to understand what happens with light in the universe. Because we're not just talking about one atom. If we're going to talk about light, we've got to at least have two atoms. You've got to have an observer and you've got to have a sender. The sender is whatever outermost ring that's inhabited by an electron, isn't it? But as we've seen, these rings, they exist. They propagate with the signal that's coming out of this thing, and they seem to go on forever, or at least, you know, in this case, to the range of whatever the two 9-volt batteries in the generator are capable of producing. We can understand something about light. Therefore, traveling not just through those rings, but we've got two sets of rings. We have the sender, we have the observer. The observer, when the probability is 1, sees the light at a distance. And we can understand how a couple of things. First of all, we can understand how objects get smaller because of probability over an expanding distance of these rings and the observer's rings as they go out, because and the interplay of this natural tendency of the whatever it is that we're calling light. It's like energy or whatever it is. We can understand what mathematically assumes the same result as our probability. And we can understand the redshift at great distances. You can understand how things don't appear the same size to us, how they get smaller as we go away from them. By understanding light as probability, because we have an interaction between two different things. different aspects of light, positive and negative conditions of working themselves through this field. And we can also understand that space-time is going to be differently shaped at the sender and the observer. And at great distances, there's going to be a pretty big difference between the shapes. At great distances, the sender will be pretty much flat. You know, we're working out these things, they're circles, but at some huge distance of billions of light years, it's just flat. It's not going to go the other direction, but it's essentially going to be flat. But for the observer, it's not going to be flat. It is going to be curved in that way. And so there's something about understanding the redshift in that too. You have to work out the mathematics of it, which is probably something we could take from observation. If we took measurements about things like what happens with the distance and how that affects where those rings are, how we can get the rings to be fatter, how we can understand the distance between, map those rings out, you know, go to the Bonneville salt flats and do this with some real equipment, and we might just get some numbers that we could plug into a formula, you know, construct a formula with, and understand these things, and it might just match what we see in nature. But that's a hypothesis, speculation. It's not theory yet.